Again, welcome to Initial Access to Malware Development course. This is your recommended development strategy, and you need this. You need this to save your time, save your effort, save your sanity. You're just going to be an overall better malware developer because of this. And one of the reasons that you're going to get so good is you're going to develop for a maximum of 4 hours a week. This is going to force you to think in different ways, different creative ways to do the work that a SOC analyst does in 40 hours that week. Your brain can do it. I promise it can. This is going to develop your overall time discipline, and this is going to increase your economy of mechanism, which is your workflow, basically. You want your workflow to be on point. And having to do it within 4 hours, having to do the work of 40 hours a week in 4 hours as you develop your projects. You're going to be a beast. You're going to be so smooth. You're going to be a smooth operator with it. Just trust me on this. Maximum of 4 hours. Now, that does not include studying this course. You need to be studying this course as you need to learn what you need to learn and put out those projects. Put out the projects that I recommend. For personal development time, a maximum of 4 hours a week. Maximum. Once you've been in the game 3 months and you're comfortable and you want to go to 8, 16, 40, by all means do it. But this is only after your repository is working smooth, all your commands that push and pull and commit to your repository, all of that stuff has a pristine level of economy and mechanism. Only then can you control your own hours and go up to all-nighters and things like that. But if you are trying to pull an all-nighter and you're fumbling and stumbling around with GitLab or GitHub and the commands, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. You're not efficient. You're not effective. I'm here to make you efficient and effective. I'm not just teaching you to code. You're going to be lethal. You're going to be putting out projects like crazy. I can promise you that. Model view controller. You're going to be coding from this strategy as well. You can read the slide. I'm not going to read it for you. Model being the brains, view being what you see when you run the malware, and the controller combines the two so that you don't have to look through the model code or the view code. You can just control it with functions that are included in the controller code. Now, you're going to be able to use the model files or the model code over and over again throughout different projects. If you would think about it, a URL object or URL block of code, let me take that back. A block of code that is built to accept a URL list object and iterate through it. You're going to be using that a lot. So why not go ahead and save it as a file in your model folder so that every time you need to reuse that, you can just import it and use the functions. This is what we're doing here. This is what we're doing here. You're going to declutter that main controller file so that you understand what you're doing. And it's going to be all functions. It's going to be beautiful, baby. I promise you. You're going to maintain an order of work. If you want to just work on how things look, you can just work on your view files and not have to worry about deleting anything in your model code. This is the most beautiful thing anyone ever invented, the model view controller. If you already code like this, more power to you. If you don't, this is going to change your life. If you've done it before and you just didn't get it, if you didn't get the essence of it, if you didn't get the strengths or the meat and potatoes of model view controller, I'm here to tell you, if you just focus on this principle, you'll be fine. Now, in my degree, when I learned to develop, I learned a lot of other things about model view controller and I wasn't feeling it. This was the only thing that I was feeling, the fact that it was all divided and pretty so that everything had a role and everything was separate. But when it came down to the controller, everything talked. So the model couldn't see the view and the view couldn't see the model until they were both combined in the controller. And that's so beautiful. I will sell that to the death of me. So beautiful. And you're going to see how that works if you stick with me in this course and my future courses. Just-in-time learning strategy. Never, ever, 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 ever again learn something just in case. Avoid cyber junk news. Anything not immediately relevant, not immediately important, and not actionable. You're going to scroll right past it. You're not going to develop when you're bored, and you're not going to develop to cure your boredom. We're not doing any of that. The goal here is to develop with speed. And by develop, I mean produce projects with no wasted effort. No wasted effort. Everything is going to be impactful. Everything is going to lead to a goal. Everything is going to pour into something meaningful. And that thing is going to pour in into something meaningful. And then so forth. It's going to be beautiful. Now, I know what you're thinking when you bought the course. Can I use ChatGPT to just figure everything out? Can I use ChatGPT to just come up with my own initial access course? You probably thought that. I would tell you, you absolutely cannot. Not because I have this thing copyrighted and got licenses and stuff for it. It's more than that. ChatGPT is a waste of time if you don't know what you're doing. If you're not an expert when you come to ChatGPT. If you ask ChatGPT, please create process injection malware that will evade an EDR, it is going to S the bed. I don't want to curse in this course because I want it to be sold to the masses, but you get what I'm saying when I say S the bed. It is not going to do well for you at all. It will give you conceptually what will happen, or conceptually the thought behind it. But ChatGPT is a large language model. It is not perfect. It is not going to invent a way. It is not going to think of a way out of thin air. It's going to use what's been fed into it. And I assure you, the right information is not being fed into it. So it's not going to be able to do that for you so that you can just save that into a project and say, look what I coded. It's not going to happen. What's the first step to build a malware? Don't ask it anything like that. Please build a detection for the following malware. It's not going to do anything like that for you. It's just not. ChatGPT is an analyst, is a basic analyst. Good uses of time. How do you use ChatGPT properly? I'm about to paste some code. Please tell me what each line of code is doing. It can do that very well. Very well. Case in point, I put some code, some malware code in a ChatGPT, and the code would, this was operating system malware, by the way. It would create its own versions of ntdll.dll functions. And I didn't know what all that stuff did at the time. And I figured it out really quickly with ChatGPT. It was able to see the code, see what was going on with the assembly and some of the lower level functions and such, and say, this is doing X, this is doing Y. I was like, oh, now I understand. A lot of times, and no disrespect, but a lot of times people that develop malware are bilingual. English is their second or third or fourth language, maybe fifth language. So when they try to type things and when they try to explain things, it's not immediately clear. This is the field we're in, and we just have to accept it. So with that said, a lot of times you have to get understanding elsewhere, and ChatGPT can be a good sidekick for that, so that you can quickly figure out what each line of code is doing. Please rename each variable in this code I found. Create names that are verbose in plain English. One of the things I hate the most, Hungarian notation. No matter how, I know what it's doing, but I hate it. I don't want to see P void, or P void is actually good. Not P void. That's a bad example. P object. So if you don't know Hungarian notation, the first letter is supposed to be the first letter of the type. And I just cannot translate that quickly. I can't. So one of the things that I do is I rename each variable so that the variable names are in plain English. Something, even if it's 20 characters long, I don't care. I don't care if it's 40 characters long and all over the place and numbers and everything. If it is plain English, I love it. That's one of the things I use ChatGPT for. I'm about to paste some code with some odd techniques. Please let me know if there are other ways to do these techniques. Now, it doesn't do very well here, but this is something. And as you prompt it more, it will get better with this. But you have to approach ChatGPT as the expert, because if you approach it as the beginner, this is going to waste your time. You're not going to know anything. You probably will get dumber. That's just the reality of it. Use Hack the Box and try Hack Me to make your tool bigger, faster, more useful. Hack the Box especially is going to come out with new web exploits and new ways to get into content management systems every week, every other week, etc. It's going to be a haven of useful things for your initial access malware. And all you simply have to do, when I teach you the bare bones, the skeleton of this thing, by building out your models and building out whatever you want your view to look like and building out how you want your controller to bring those things together, you'll be able to take what Hack the Box is doing and insert them as modules. Case in point, a new box just came out recently. You probably, this course will age, but a new Hack the Box machine came out recently where the machine had a CVE. All you have to do is take that CVE and make it the model, and then have a function to that model that accepts a URL. Boom, done. You can go home. You got the whole course. And you continue to do that over time till you have a bigger, better initial access tool. Now, I know I'm speaking as the adversary, but we're not adversarial. We have to think like the adversary. So when I speak and I talk about getting better as a malware developer, as a red teamer, I get happy because I know that is half the journey that I need to become a better detection engineer. So yes, in this scenario, you are in the black market business of selling a web auto exploiter. Your tool must have no external missing dependencies to install. This is huge. I would rather you work 40 hours making sure you have no missing dependencies for your customer to install than work 4 hours and they have to install several dependencies. This is one of the reasons why Sliver is favored over Havoc. And I know I'm speaking about C2s right now, but I need you to just ride with me for a minute. Good software that people love, have no missing dependencies. I don't have to install Python weird, crazy library and hope that somebody has some documentation on it and hope that the code isn't corrupted. No, we're going to be learning to code where I can pass you the full repo and it runs out of the box. No dependencies at all missing. Everything is self-contained. Your tool must be simple to use. This should be self-explanatory. Usability, we're aiming for that. Your tool must evade reverse engineering and malware analysis. Now, this is a touchy subject. If it is just Python code, obviously not. You just open up the Python code and you read it. However, when we start compiling our malware, making it into executables and binary files, we have to go through that process to make sure that it isn't reverse engineered and analyzed with malware analysis. The reason is, not only do we not want blue teamers and threat hunters to have it so easily, but if we lose our malware or our malware gets downloaded by other hackers that wish to compete with us, we don't want them to steal our secrets. So we have to make sure that they can't just easily reverse it with Ghidra. So I'm going to be going through that as well. Detection engineering. You have to separate And we're putting our blue hat back on, by the way, and we're not the adversary anymore. You got to separate a legitimate web client request from a malicious client request. I hope I didn't say too many big words there. Essentially what this is, if I send, for example, a payload that breaks some kind of code, let's talk about injection exploits for a minute. I send a request to your legitimate web server that breaks code and inserts my own code. I could send that request to your server and that would be successful, or I could send a legitimate request. I could send a legitimate SQL command or a Python or whatever it is. So you have to understand what SQL injection or Python or command injection looks like compared to a legitimate request. That is easier said than done. Easier said than done. I would tell you to just go to payloads, all the things, but it's not quite that simple. This requires reading code. This requires understanding what should be in code and what shouldn't be in code. This requires understanding where it makes sense to break code for the adversary and where it makes sense to break code for legitimate people. This requires automating the detection using one or more multiple means. Now, we won't go into it too far right now, but you need to understand how to install a web application firewall. You need to understand how to build a Suricata IDS, because especially if you have web traffic traversing a network, and I've seen it where the web server is deep in the network and people from the outside have to send requests into the internal network into a web server that's sitting on the inside, but I digress. When you have a setup like that, you need a Suricata instance that will ingest that web client traffic and say, is this kosher? Is this not kosher? And we know right out of the box that requires tuning. So you got to know all of this stuff. And I'm here to teach it so that you're more valuable to the world. Now, speed. In that 4 hours, you're going to have to pump out some projects. We're going to keep our development time low and our project output high. I promise you, if you are on point with your Git pulls, your Git pushes, your Git commits, your Git adds, you're on point. You don't have to stumble and fumble around with how to use your SSH keys and your API keys. There's another key that you use for GitHub. I'm not thinking about it. Or if you use GitLab, all those things are those authentication keys things. You get that stuff out of the way and you develop a flow. That's what it's about. You can't develop that flow if you gave yourself 40 hours. You can't develop that flow if you gave yourself all night to figure it out. It just ain't gonna work. You need to give yourself a defined number of minutes to figure this stuff out. And I promise you, you're gonna do it efficiently, effectively. And I cannot drive this one home deep enough. Development time low, project output high. When you develop, when you create with me, when you develop malware with me, eventually you'll do something new and you're going to want to brag about it and you're going to want to bring it to me. That's good stuff. You should do that. 100%. When I do new stuff, I post it to YouTube and I'm jumping around like a kid. This is how I am. Stay goal oriented. I know people who talk about SMART goals and keeping your goals and keeping your objectives and writing things down. It's not corny information. It's not corny information. I promise you. You have to stay goal oriented. I know what you're thinking. I know my goals. I'm good. I could just I know what I want to do. Don't tell me to write down my goals. Don't tell me to track my goals. Listen, you need to be looking at your goals all the time. The reason is you're in malware development now. You're not in Network Plus. You're not in CompTIA, Pen Test Plus. You're not in Coursera, Google certification, whatever, cyber certification. I don't know what they call it. You're in malware development. Malware development where you are at the lowest level in Windows. Not in this course, but in my future courses that you're going to buy. In this course, you're at the lower levels of web servers, web applications. You're at the lower level of post and get requests. You're at the lower levels when it comes to server-side request forgeries and command injections and server-side template injections. That is low-level stuff. Not low-level in the sense that we know low-level, but low-level relative to web servers and web traffic. So stay with me here. Don't nitpick my words here. Sounds like I'm nitpicking them. You are about to embark on a journey that is going to drown you with information. Staying goal-oriented means that you don't squirrel yourself. Staying goal-oriented means that you don't accidentally watch a video that's not going to be helpful. If you're goal-oriented and you watch a malware development video and it is not aligned with your goals, you'll turn it off. You'll be offended by the time you're about to waste and you turn it off. And that's why you stay goal-oriented. You learn to do too many useless things and you fail your journey. You're going to learn to comment thoroughly and through intention. This is going to be something that I harp on later on. You're going to hear me talk about it. Use model view control. We went over that. Avoid Hungarian notation. Any coding style that is not easily readable. You're going to see me code some things. It's not going to be PEP 8. Or it might be. Some of it might be PEP 8. But I'm not going to care about any of the standards or any of the coding styles that the industry accepts. We're going to be able to read the code easily and together. Barney style, because none of that stuff matters if you can't read the code. And show your work. We went over that. Commit to your repository. Push it to your repository often. For several reasons. It's saved somewhere. I'm developing a website right now. And I know that there's going to come a time in the future where my website is attacked. I need to be able to push that code somewhere else quickly. And the only way I can do that is a repository. I need to be able to shut down my VPS or my private server or whatever they call it these days. It's not a private server, it's actually public. But my server, I need to be able to shut that down and rebuild another one with DigitalOcean or anybody else and pull that code into that server and run it. Change the IP address to the domain, run it. So it's important. Not just the web devs, though. Everyone that develops, you need a repository. Maybe you're at work and you need to add a few lines to code because I know you don't do nothing at work. I know you're just sitting around. I know it. So you need a repository. I'm gonna show you how to do that, but you should know how to do it already. That is the end of my presentation here. I hope you enjoy my humor. I hope you enjoy my lightheartedness because it is the way.